Hi, thank you for joining me for Testimony Tuesday. I'm really excited to be spending some time with you this week. I've been looking forward to this one since last week. I knew what this Testimony Tuesday was going to be about several weeks ago as the Lord was reminding me, you know what? You're coming up on a year since I set you free from corporate America and called you into walking with me into your purpose and who you are. And I'm really excited to talk to you about that. And the testimony for tonight, I'll tell you, I was driving home from work tonight around 6:45, and I was sitting at a stoplight, and the Lord said to me, who you are is so much more important than what you do. And I knew it was him because I wasn't even thinking about anything related to the topic. It just came in like a phrase that just came blazing into my mind, and it caught my attention. And because I was heading home to cook dinner and then record Testimony Tuesday, and I wasn't totally sure. There's so many parts of the story. I wasn't sure where he wanted me to camp and what the overarching takeaway would be until he said that to me on the way home. And so I want to put that into your mind. And as we begin this conversation tonight, who you are is so much more important than what you do. So let's take that into the story. So last week, I was approaching the date of July 31st and August 1st are incredibly significant in my life now. And what happened was a little over a year ago, it was on July 31st last year, I went into work on a normal day, expecting just my normal routine, and I was let go from my job. And I have to tell you, I loved that job. I had invested my heart and soul into growing that business for that organization. And actually the ownership of the organization, the building, the physical building, changed hands 3 times in the 5.5 years that I was there. And so with each time it changed, there were always the little period of unknown, am I gonna have a job? What's gonna change in my job role? Am I gonna like this? And so I'd gone through a couple of those, and my company was being acquired again last summer. And what I thought was gonna be a normal day turned into be a total blindside. And I loved that job. Like I said, I was in a role where I was screening medical charts from referrals from the hospitals all over the state of Kansas, but mostly in Wichita, and helping connect sick and broken people with services for rehabilitation or long-term care placement if they needed that. And I loved what I did because I got to interact with all different kinds of people. I got to go see them in the hospital. My job was very mentally stimulating. I was able to bring a skill set that was combined from sales and from my training in college with my degree. So it was like my favorite job I had ever had. And like I said, I'd been in that position for almost 6 years, loved it. I didn't represent one of the nicest nursing facilities in town. In fact, it was one riddled with challenges from even before I got there. But part of my mission, and I knew what it was there, was to help grow it, to service and help people in the community that really needed to be connected with services. And a lot of those people were people of a demographic that usually would sometimes have a hard time finding that kind of help. So I had so much job satisfaction. Every day was intense and stressful. And, sometimes when we're doing something, even that we love, because our Father in heaven is so good and he sees the whole picture. He sees not just the right now and the 6 months from now, but he sees the 5 years and the 2 years and the 10 years. And he ultimately is in charge of every detail in people's lives. And so sometimes the things that we love and that we would never just willingly surrender over to him, he takes from us, or he allows to be taken from us. Sometimes it's forever, and sometimes it's for a season. And so tonight I really want to talk about the Lord and what he promises for his children. And I started by what he said, who you are is so much more important. And I want to start with that and say, if you believe that there is God the Creator, if you believe in Jesus Christ, you are by divine order, a son and a daughter of God. And as a son and a daughter of God, you are beloved, and you have a whole host of promises, protection, provision, redemption, salvation, all of these things from the overflow of your sonship or your daughtership. And I feel like that is the theme for tonight, because, the Lord, when he allows hard things to happen and things that are confusing to us and things that are hurtful or humiliating, when I lost my job, it was done in a very humiliating way. It was done basically not in the presence of a boardroom full of people, but it was done, I was pulled out of a meeting, talked to, and then had to go back in and collect my things and leave. So everybody knew what happened, and it was done on purpose that way. It was ugly and nasty. And the crazy thing about it, and when I say I was blindsided, I was blindsided. I had always been a top performer. No matter who owned that building, I was always like one of the top reps in the nation. I did a great job. I work hard, and I have a crazy work ethic, sometimes too hard, where my family suffers and I don't have balance and I don't take care of myself. But I've always had a really good reputation in the community for doing my job with excellence. I've won awards, and I always have taken a lot of pride in just when I put my mind and my heart is in something, I'll knock it out of the park. Not because I'm so great, but just because I really think a lot of it is my work ethic. And I think about how the word and the Lord says, do everything as unto the Lord and not for man. And that's just the way of life with me, no matter what it is. And so I had never had a disciplinary incident, a write-up, a verbal warning, a written warning, anything in the history of my tenure with that business. And I was pulled to a room to be told all these things, and I just wasn't a fit there anymore and all this. And so there's a little bit of a backstory to that. About a month before that, before the actual takeover, the upper level VPs were getting in touch with the people with boots on the ground like myself to get a kind of a feel for the geography and the market that they were buying into. And so I'd had some great conversations with that person. And when the decision-making switched roles from how it had been set up before to the new person in charge, she met with me and she wanted to change up the entire way I did my business and completely dismantled it. Wanted to do it her way and not any part of my way, which had been proven to work and work really, really well and had given the building a good reputation in the community. And so I voiced my concerns privately to that VP out of kindness, just saying, hey, I'm concerned about how this is going to go. These are the changes that are being proposed. I don't know that that's going to work, but I'll do whatever you want me to do. And so that was my position. And so when I got fired, I know that there was a spirit of retaliation for going above that person's head. She was one of those people, sometimes people that get a power position just love power. And it is what it is. So it's one of those deals. So it was interesting though, because the Lord, even that morning, and thankfully I was journaling at this time, so I was able to go back to when I prepared for Testimony Tuesday today, to go back and look at my notes the week before that happened, the morning of that happened, what I wrote in my journal, the days after, what the Lord was speaking to me and what he was doing as he led me through that time of transition. And it was really, really cool, because the morning that happened in my quiet time, the Lord was already reminding me of who I was. He had given me some supernatural peace and confidence. And when I found myself in that position just a couple hours later, completely blindsided, completely supernatural peace washed over me. He gave me a grace to where I did not get angry. I said some things, I pushed back and how is this happening? Like, I've never been in trouble, you know, just tell me more. And it's like the things that were brought up were just not based on any merit and just ridiculous, just ridiculous. I'll just leave it at that. And so, but the Lord had gone ahead of me. And even in that moment, in that very difficult conversation, I didn't get angry. I didn't lose my composure. It was so beyond my flesh that the only way I can explain it is that it was the Holy Spirit just tempering me and keeping me calm and keeping me cool and just keeping me in a position to just receive and trust him and maintain dignity and grace. And so anyways, I came home that day, and of course, you know, I called my husband when I left, and I was full of grief. I was so sad because that had been my mission field. That had been my baby. I was so invested, and it was just ripped out from underneath me, and it was a shock and all of those things. So I spent that day, you know, dealing with the grief, dealing with the reality of like, this is what's happened, and it's obviously out of my hands. And the interesting thing is the Lord reminded me about a month prior to that. I was sitting outside one night watching the sunset, waiting for my husband to meet me at home after work. And I felt the Lord say to me, my yoke is easy, my burden is light. And I had been having such a heavy feeling that night, and I remember this so clearly because at that point I was just weary. I did have stress because we were going through this takeover, and I had all these questions and stuff, and my work was a heavy load, and on top of that I was working a second job, and I was just exhausted. And I remember having this thought out there, just thinking like, I live in this beautiful place. The Lord gives us these beautiful sunsets to enjoy, yet I'm heavy and I'm burdened. And he said, my yoke is easy, my burden is light. So even before this, he was ahead of me, of course, and he was beginning the conversation with me, beginning that thought process. And so the cool thing that happened is that I lose my job unexpectedly. The very next morning I wake up with this incredible peace, like no more sadness. It was bizarre, totally not what I would have expected even of myself. Normally, if I was just wallowing in my loss and my sadness and all that, it would be several days to a week or more, and I'd be unhappy and I'd go be angry and all these things, but I didn't wake up with any of that. And I had this very unusual peace, and I ran an errand, and on my way home, the Lord said, share your testimony. And I went on to go home that morning. I hit record outside, and I just began to share my testimony. And the love and the support and the things that the Lord showed me through that changed my life. I actually reshared that testimony just a couple days ago when it showed up in my Facebook memories, if you want to go back and listen to that. But it was a turning point. And I looked at my journal this morning, back at that time, and that morning, like I said, the Lord gave me the idea to share my testimony. He covered me with a supernatural peace. He reminded me again, you are a messenger and you are a lover of the broken. He spoke my identity to me. And I couldn't help but think about that when he said that on my way home from work, when he said, what you do is more important, or is not more important than who you are. And I know that message is for somebody or some buddies who are listening to this week, and who you are is incredibly beloved. And whether, you know, we all have unique identities, but when we are sons and daughters of the God Most High, we share the promises, we share all the things that come with that, as I said earlier. And the Lord gave me Psalm 5 that day. And I'm going to come back to that, because first, he gave me Psalm 35 last week when I was thinking ahead to what was coming, this anniversary of this pivotal, life-changing moment. The Lord gave me Psalm 35 last week. And so I know I'm supposed to share that with you, and there's two parts of it that I'm going to share. And actually, Psalm 35, and hopefully I don't lose my place here. Psalm 35, oh, and I want to say this, I almost forgot to say this. I listened to that testimony that I gave a year ago, last August 1st, I believe it was. Like I said, I shared it. One of the things that I said in there, and I wrote it out, I have a supernatural peace, and I know the Lord will vindicate the situation. And when I re-listened to that a couple days ago, that really resonated in my mind, vindicate. Because as I get on to tell you this testimony, you're gonna see how the Lord vindicated what happened to me, way beyond what I ever would have expected. And I know He can do the same for you, whether it be a work thing or some other thing. We'll come back to that too. But last week He gave me Psalm 35, and I want to share that. And Psalm 35 was written by David, and it's a prayer. The theme of it, my study Bible says, a prayer to God for help against those who try to inflict injury for no reason, when our enemies are unjust and lie about us. Even when we do good to them, we can appeal to God, who is always faithful and always just. And so they believe that this psalm was written by David when he was hiding and he was in exile from Saul. You know, David was King Saul's number one warrior. He was getting so famous for his conquests and everything that Saul began to have fear that the people were loving him more than the king, and he began to get jealous, and he actually went after David to take his life. And so David was forced to go run and hide and be in the mountains and depart from Saul during that time period. And then, as you know the rest of the story, at a point in the future, the Lord brought him back and He placed him upon the throne as king, as He had already determined that he would be. So this was written in the time that David was hiding from Saul, in that time period. And I'm going to share it from the first part, from the Passion Translation. And this is what he says. And I'm going to read verses, I'm going to read verses 1 through 10. Really good. O Lord, fight for me. Harass the hecklers. Accuse my accusers. Fight those who fight against me. Put on your armor, Lord. Take up your shield and protect me. Rise up, mighty God. Grab your weapons of war and block the way of the wicked who come to fight me. Stand for me when they stand against me. Speak over my soul. I am your strong Savior. Humiliate those who seek my harm. Defeat them all. Frustrate their plans to defeat me and drive them back. Disgrace them as they have devised their plans to disgrace me. Blow them away like dust in the wind, with the angel of Almighty God driving them back. Make the road in front of them nothing but slippery darkness, with the angel of Yahweh behind them, chasing them away. For though I did nothing wrong to them, they set a trap for me, wanting me to fail and fall. Surprise them with your ambush, Lord, and catch them in the very trap they set for me. Let them be the ones to fail and fall into destruction. Then my fears will dissolve into limitless joy. My whole being will overflow with gladness because of your mighty deliverance. Everything inside of me will shout it out. There is no one like you, Lord. For look at how you protect the weak and helpless from the strong and heartless who oppress them. David goes on to say in Psalm 35, verses 23 through 28, O Lord, you have seen this. O Lord, you have seen this. Be not silent. Do not be far from me, O Lord. Awake and rise to my defense. Contend for me, my Lord and God. Vindicate me in your righteousness, O Lord my God, and do not let them gloat over me. Do not let them think, aha, just what we wanted, or say, we have swallowed him up. May all who gloat over my distress be put to shame and confusion. May all who exalt themselves over me be clothed with shame and disgrace. May those who delight in my vindication shout for joy and gladness. May they always say, the Lord be exalted, who delights in the well-being of his servant. My tongue will speak of your righteousness and of your praises all day long. You know, I read that last week, and I felt like that last part, I felt like that is what has happened. The Lord has brought this entire situation full circle in my life, and I'll tell you how. You know, the word vindicate, and because that was one of the things I said in that testimony video, was that I know the Lord will vindicate. And so as I read that, the word vindicate really kept running around in my mind. And I always know there's a reason, and the Holy Spirit is trying to teach me and counsel me on something. And I went and looked up the word vindicate. Now, these are the definitions for vindicate that I found. To clear someone of blame or suspicion, to free from allegation or blame, to provide justification or defense for, to avenge, to set free or deliver, to free from a charge of wrongdoing. And synonyms, which are words that are similar to vindicate, would be to acquit, to exonerate, to clear, to liberate, to redeem, to avenge, to redress. And, I thought about that because of what God has gone on to do with that situation. First of all, I want to say this, like I said earlier, sometimes he'll allow something to be taken from us because he's doing a thing in us. And I have to tell you, the Lord took me out of that corporate grinding setting where I was exhausted and weary. And yes, I was making really good money and we were enjoying the financial blessings, kind of, but there was no quality of life. It was so out of balance. And on top of that, I had been feeling like this weight of carrying this disappointment for him, that I hadn't been ministering in the ways that I could have in that job and all this. And I kind of talked about that last week. He had already set me free of that part at this point, but this journey over the last year has been all about the Lord taking me into deeper levels of discovering my identity, deeper levels of healing, forgiveness, just a journey that if I was super distracted with all the corporate stuff, we wouldn't have been able to go on together. And he has shown me that time and time again. Because he set me free from that yoke of corporate America, I was able to not only host a Bible study, but also teach on this whole process of identity. I was able to take a high-level course in the identity process through Jamie Winship's school. All of these things that I couldn't have put all those extra hours and time and attention, and just the things that the Lord wanted to do with me over this last year. I've since been called to co-labor with a couple other ladies and teach an identity class this fall, which I'll tell you about here in the next couple of weeks, because I want you to come to that. But these opportunities to really walk deeper and further into the gifting that the Lord has for me in his kingdom without some of that extra distraction. The Lord went on to give my husband a promotion, to give him a raise, to give us strategy to keep me from having to go back into corporate America and have more freedom with the work that I do now. I deliver medication. He increased my territory, not only to just 1 or 2 buildings. I am walking into nursing facilities all over the state of Kansas on a regular basis, a daily and weekly basis, loving on the people that I get to encounter, whether that be little old ladies in wheelchairs, whether that be wearied staff that are tired. I get to bring the kingdom presence into those places, into conversations, into new relationships. He has expanded that territory in ways I never would have experienced if I was tied to that job. So the Lord has just, sometimes what feels like a demotion is actually a promotion. And it may not look in the way that we would think in a worldly sense, but in a spiritual sense, and even tied to great blessing, the Lord does things and not in worldly ways. So remember that. And so I just want to encourage you with that, to just refocus you back on who he is and what he does. So he had given me that last week. And so I've been thinking about that and how much I related to David, especially at the end of that Psalm 35. And so I want to tell you, this is where, and then Psalm 5. Let me back up because I have notes on all the things that I know he wants me to share. So in Psalm 35, we see that God promises to help the persecuted, that he is just and he brings judgment on unrepentant sinners, and he loves and upholds his people in good cause. And we can trust on him for that. We don't have to take revenge when people do us wrong. We have to just sit back in our sonship and in our daughtership and let the Lord vindicate the situation. And sometimes it happens quickly, sometimes it takes years, and sometimes we never see how he does that, but he's faithful and he does it. And his plan and his way is so much better than we try to meddle and we try to figure it out and we try to get justice for ourselves. This is where we let go and we let God Do what only he can do and trust in him. Trust in his good plans and purposes. He says in all things, he works for the good of those who love him and are called according to his purpose. Even when it doesn't look like it, hold tight, keep your eyes on the Lord, and expect what he's going to do. So the day after I was let go, the Lord, as I said in my journal, he gave me Psalm 5. And I want to read Psalm 5, the whole thing to you, because I know this is also going to help somebody who might be going through something similar or totally different, where the dynamic is where you have, you feel like you've just been done wrong, or something you loved has been, you're not making sense of things. Trust the Lord. In Psalm 5, the theme of this one is the lies of the enemy. God is able to defend us from lies spoken against us. Give ear to my words, O Lord. Consider my sighing. Listen to my cry for help, my King and my God. For to you I pray. In the morning, O Lord, you hear my voice. In the morning I lay my request before you and wait in expectation. You are not a God who takes pleasure in evil. With you the wicked cannot dwell. The arrogant cannot stand in your presence. You hate all who do wrong. You destroy those who tell lies. Bloodthirsty and deceitful men the Lord abhors. But I, by your great mercy, will come into your house. In reverence will I bow down toward your holy temple. Lead me, O Lord, in your righteousness because of my enemies. Make straight your way before me. Not a word from their mouth can be trusted. Their heart is filled with destruction. Their throat is an open grave. With their tongue they speak deceit. Declare them guilty, O God. Let their intrigues be their downfall. Banish them from their many sins, for they have rebelled against you. But let all who take refuge in you be glad. Let them ever sing for joy. Spread your protection over them, that those who love your name may rejoice in you. For surely, O Lord, you bless the righteous. You surround them with your favor as a shield. This is what the Lord does for us. We can go to him and we can pray this kind of a prayer to him and just give it over to him. Sometimes we have to give it over to him again and again and again, but he is faithful. He hears us. He is our shield. He's our banner. He takes care of the things that aren't fair in due time, in his perfect timing. And I want to tell you this. So that situation I walked away from, and one of the things that the Lord began to do in me was not only to reassure me that he had me and that he would have the vindication in that situation, but he also checked my heart and he told me, remember what I said when I said to love and pray for your enemies. He moved me right into a spirit of already being mindful of forgiving and not holding a grudge. He showed me again, if you hold a grudge against this person, there were 2 people involved that had this happen to me. If you hold a grudge against this, it's gonna hurt you. It's gonna stifle what I'm trying to do. Let it go, release it to me. Let me work on your heart. Let me keep you in the truth. Let me focus your mind on the places that I want your mind to be focused. And you don't have time to harbor unforgiveness and bitterness and to dwell in the past. We're moving forward. We're marching forward together. And I want to tell you, there were times that sometimes I would think about, or that person would run across my mind. And what really caught my attention was the Lord, like, if I would have a moment of like, ick, when I thought about that situation again, the Lord would quickly redirect me and say, bless her, don't curse her. And I'm like, ooh, okay. And I went to the word because I remembered things that Jesus said, and I wanted to bring those into this conversation because these prayers and Psalms, you know, God is not a genie in a bottle, and we don't say do this and do that against our enemies, but we can pour our hearts out and we can say, this is our situation, Lord, and I know you're just, and I know you're all these things, but we also have to remember that we are called to love others, even those who persecute us. We don't have to be their best friends, but we need to put a guard on our mouth. We need to get our heart in line with grace that the Father has given us for our sins against him. And so I want to redirect us also to Matthew 5:44, so this doesn't get taken way out of context to the left and not have the whole picture in with the right. So Jesus said in Matthew 5:44 in the Sermon on the Mount, he said, but I say to you, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you. And the Lord called upon me to do that for these 2 people several times over the last year. And that was not me in my flesh, because Azure doesn't normally want to do things like that. It was the Holy Spirit, and it was God saying, let's keep your heart in check. Luke 6:27 and 28, Jesus said, love your enemies, do good to those who hate you, bless those who curse you, pray for those who mistreat you. And I want to take that into the next part of the story. So this all happened end of July 31st last year in 2024. Interesting things began to happen in February. So we're looking at, 7 months later. The week of February 8th, and I can say all this with confidence because I journal all these things. And so the Lord, as part of preparing for this testimony, he had me go back and look at what was I saying to you around the time that things began to shift again? What was I saying to you? So thankfully, by journaling, I could go back and be reminded of what he was saying to me. And there were certain things that really stuck out to me today when I went to go back and look at these. On February 8th, one of the things the Lord said to me was, we work for the kingdom and not the empire. On February 10th, and I'm talking about this year, so this was 7 months after I was fired unjustly. On February 10th, he said, no person's sin against you can define who you are. And that's for somebody listening to this tonight. I don't know what's happened to you. I don't know what has been done to you that is wrong. Do not get stuck. The enemy wants you stuck, and he wants you to put a label on being a victim of this or being a recipient of that, and he wants you stuck in that place. Don't let him do that to you. You are not defined by the sin of another person against you, and that's what I'm supposed to share with you. Don't live an identity based on that person's sin. It's not who you are. It's not who your Father says you are. The other thing that he said on February 10th is, where have you come from and where are you going? And that was in the morning. That afternoon, an interesting series of events began to happen. Number one of the VPs of the company that was now in charge, that had been my boss who fired me, reached out to me by text just to check in and see how I was doing on February 10th. I thought, that's interesting. The same day, as I was delivering meds to 2 different nursing homes, I ran into not one, but 2 former coworkers that had been in leadership at the building that I got fired from. Coincidence? I think not. At that point, I was like, God, what are you doing? God, what are you doing? This is all in the same day. It's all in the period of like 2 hours. Like, what are you doing? I know you're doing something because this is how you do it. And then the next thing, the fourth thing that happened was I was delivering med out in Goddard, and there was some construction. And I had to do a U-turn off the highway, which was like a reroute to get through this construction. And I didn't normally take that path. But as I was doing that and I hit a stop, I happened to glance over and I caught the name of this business, and it was called Veneer Great Plains. And the second part is the name of the building that I had represented when I was fired from. So 4 things happened in just a couple of hours, and it was like bam, 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 bam. And it, of course, catches my attention. I'm like, God, what are you up to? What are you doing? You asked me this morning, where have you come from? Where are you going? Are you calling me back to this? Like, why is this coming in my mind? Are you testing me? Is this like one of those moments where I'm like, when the Israelites were set free and then they wandered in the desert and they wanted to go back to Egypt to their familiar? Like, is this a test? Like, my whole brain was all over the place on this. But it was just an interesting thing that happened. And I journaled about it and nothing ever came of it. So I'm like, okay, well, that was weird. Maybe I think it was a test. Maybe God was testing my heart to see if I craved the old life, That's what I chalked it up to at the time. But then in March, so a month later, so 8 months away from being fired, I was delivering a med in a whole nother town south of Wichita, ran into another former coworker, and I recognized her face, but I didn't remember her name. And she remembered me because she came over to me and she said, so did you hear the news? And I'm like, no, what news? And she said, yeah, well, so-and-so and so-and-so corporate came in and fired both of them and got rid of some other people, and they're no longer there. There's been a total regime change at that building. And I was like, no, I hadn't heard that. Interesting. Okay. So I appreciate her telling me. She must have thought I was caught up in bitterness or something, and I get that because a lot of people probably would be. So I left that day and I thought, that's interesting, well, whatever, it is what it is. That was in March. Well, then in mid-May, I get a text message and a phone call from who is now in leadership at that building, saying, hey, I would love to talk to you. So I'm always a girl to entertain options and get information and see, what's going on. So I went ahead and accepted an appointment, met with this person who's awesome, and he was able to kind of fill me in on some things that had happened and how they were refocusing and got rid of all the bad apples. And, I had been referred back to him by several people and wanted to talk about, where I was at with life and what I was doing, if I'd ever consider getting back into that kind of work, kind of taking my temperature on, what that might look like. And it was great because I was able to say, I'm doing this and I love it, and I don't think I want to go back into that world in that capacity. And we had a really good conversation for about an hour or so, and then finally it was like, I'm just kind of looking at plan B, plan C, and different things, well, what would it take for you to come back someday? And I thought about it, and I was like, if we're talking about numbers, it'd be that. And then I proposed an idea, and I was like, I love that building, and I love the mission, and I love serving the people here. Maybe I could do it in a contract way. Maybe I could do it on my own terms and kind of help you guys on the side or whatever, Maybe there's that. I don't know. I don't know if I'd even want to. But I pitched that out. And then in early June, that person circles back to me and says, I love that idea. Let's talk some more. So needless to say, 9 months later, all the tide had shifted. All the lies and the things that had taken me out of that position were redeemed and vindicated. The muck was cleared out, the truth rose up for itself, and I'm now in a place where I have been able to negotiate the terms of getting involved in that, but only in the capacity that I would like to be. I'm not going back to work, full-time in that capacity, but I'm getting to do some love there and get compensated and do it in the way that I have dictated to do it, with the full blessing of the new leadership and just the happiness to be collaborating and for me, it is so great because I get to do my regular job, and that's my baby now. I love going into all these facilities and loving on people, staff, and patients. My dogs get to go with me every day, but now I have it on my terms. I can work from my little computer. I can do as much or as little as I want. I don't have to do the corporate calls and all the things, and it's literally on my terms, and it's to help them, and it's to compensate me a little bit for my effort. And it's a win-win because it also puts me back into part of the field and mission that I absolutely love, but without all the stress, without all the quotas and all the corporate stuff. But that is what I want to share with you. The Lord redeemed that situation entirely. And sometimes, I wanted to probably camp there for this Testimony Tuesday. Sometimes, like I said, the Lord allows something to be taken from us because he knows we would never surrender it. And sometimes it's for our own good because he's doing something in us, or he wants to take care of something with us, or even for other people. Sometimes they need a little correction and relocation. If it weren't for losing that job, just not even 2 full weeks later, I was diagnosed with melanoma skin cancer on my leg, and it had to be cut out. I had to have 2 surgeries. There were 2 different spots. And that spot, I had seen it about 6 months prior and had just been putting it off. I wasn't taking care of myself, you guys. I was so out of balance and just corporate, spread too many places then. And if it weren't for that stripping away and that forced slowdown, I probably would have had melanoma skin cancer still on my leg today, and it probably would have gotten worse. It may have even spread. It may have been a totally different outcome. So that was another one of the huge blessings that came about from getting that taken from me, even though it was humiliating. And I know the Lord was like, girl, this one's gonna hurt. It's gonna hurt your pride. It's gonna sting. Maybe I needed a little bit of humbling, and I'm okay with that because I think we all do from time to time, and it's a good thing, actually. So there were so many facets and so many blessings and so many beautiful things, and just, I say all that to say that not all bad things are bad, and he, like I said, he works all things for the good of those who love him and are called according to his purpose. And sometimes he demotes us or allows us to go that way to promote us in a different realm, and then to come full circle and give it back to us in an even better way than we had it the first time. And that's what he did. So that was my testimony for this week. I want to echo and stress the words that he said to me again is, what you do is not more important than who you are. Who you are is a beloved son and daughter of the God Most High. Trust him. He's got your back. He vindicates. He makes all things right in his perfect timing. And his plans and his ways are so much higher and better than the ways that we would choose or think that they should go. So friends, I'm just going to leave you with that this week. God bless you. Have a great week.